I never thought I'd be sitting here typing this out, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I used to believe I had a pretty good life. Married to Lisa for about 5 years, we had our ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. She's always been a bit of a bitch, sharp-tongued, quick to lie, and never shy about throwing a tantrum if things didn't go her way. Still, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. The trouble started subtly. Little things, you know. She'd be distracted, secretive, spending more time on her phone than usual. I'd catch her hiding her screen when I walked into the room, and the way she'd flinch or give me a quick fake smile. That should have been a red flag, but I ignored it. I thought maybe she was just stressed, maybe hiding some surprise gift or something. Plus, she'd get defensive if I asked her about her phone, snapping at me to mind my own business, calling me paranoid. Then came the funeral. My brother's funeral, to be precise. It was a heartbreaking day, and I'd put a lot into supporting my family, especially my sister, who was devastated. Lisa was there, of course, pretending to be sympathetic, but I started noticing her acting a little odd that day. She was unusually touchy with her phone, sneaking glances, whispering into it. I caught her texting under the table during the service, which was weird because she's not exactly discreet about her phone habits. I even saw her step outside a few times, looking over her shoulder, like she was waiting or hiding something. That night I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and still trying to process everything about my brother's death. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. Something was bothering me, and I kept thinking about how Lisa kept sneaking off that day. So I decided to check her phone. I didn't plan to snoop, honestly, but I needed to know what was really going on. I grabbed her phone while she was in the shower and just started scrolling. It was easier than I thought. She left it unlocked, maybe forgetting because she was so distracted. What I saw made my stomach drop. There were texts, not just casual texts, but flirty, intimate messages. She was calling someone baby, saying she missed him, that she couldn't wait to see him again. The guy was someone I didn't even know, some guy named Jake. The texts weren't just innocent, they were downright dirty. They talked about meeting up, about her wanting to feel alive again, about how her marriage was just a joke. I sat there, stunned. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was this why she was acting strange? Did she even care about me? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, feeling numb, feeling like I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed a plan. I had to find out how deep this went. That's when I realized, I don't even know who she is anymore. Was I just some fool she married for convenience or to keep up appearances? Or was she really just a bitchy liar who played me all along? I thought I knew her, but now I wasn't sure I ever really did. I felt so angry, so hurt, and yet, I knew I had to be smart about what I did next. Because if this was real, and I think it was, my wife Lisa was not the person I thought she was. I didn't sleep that night. The images kept flashing in my head, the secret messages, her sneaking around, the way she'd lied to my face so many times before. I kept asking myself how I missed all of it. Was I blind? Was I just too damn comfortable thinking I married the good girl? Maybe I was naive, or maybe I just didn't want to see the truth. The next morning, everything felt different. I woke up with a heavy weight in my chest, knowing I had to confront her. I decided I'd gather more evidence before saying anything, so I started digging around a little more. Her email, her social media accounts, anything I could find that confirmed my suspicions. It was like opening a door I never wanted to open, but one I knew I had to walk through. Over the next few days, I found more receipts, texts, photos, even an email exchange where she was planning to meet Jake again. It wasn't just a one-time thing. No, it was ongoing, secret meetings, stolen moments, the whole 9 yards. She'd been lying so convincingly, telling me she was working late or going out with friends. Meanwhile, she was deep in her affair. I felt like a complete fool. How did I not see this coming? How could I have been so blind? And Lisa, she's not just a liar, she's a bitch about it. When I confronted her with the evidence, her reaction was classic. She looked me dead in the eyes, scoffed, and said, "You're overreacting, Mike. You're just jealous because I'm bored. Jake's just a friend, nothing more. You're imagining things." That was her go-to line: deny, deny, deny. Even when faced with proof, she played the victim like I was the one with the problem. Her tone was so dismissive, like she couldn't care less that I'd spent sleepless nights obsessing over her secret life. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. Every word she spat at me, every excuse she made just made me angrier. She called Jake her escape, said she was trapped in a marriage she hated, that I was a bad husband who never paid attention to her. Meanwhile, she was out cheating on me with her best friend's brother, for God's sake. It was like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? Did I ever really know her? Or was she just pretending all these years? The biggest shock was how quick she was to lie, how easily she turned everything around to make me feel like I was the crazy one. I couldn't believe I'd trusted her, that I'd shared my life and my feelings with someone who was capable of so much deception. That night after the confrontation, I was left with nothing but a hollow feeling. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I had to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to smash her phone, her laptop, tear her world apart. But I also knew that just reacting in anger wouldn't fix anything. I needed to be smart. I needed a plan, because if she was capable of lying so convincingly, then what else was she hiding? I looked at her standing there still trying to deny everything, and I realized I was done. Done with her lies, her cheating, her fake smile. I had to think about myself now, about what I wanted, about what I deserved. I didn't want to be the fool anymore. I wanted to get out, but I also wanted her to pay for what she did. That's when I started planning my revenge, because I wasn't going to let her get away with this betrayal without a fight. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into planning. Even though every moment I wasn't actively working on it, I was replaying what I'd seen, what she'd said, the lies she'd spun. I couldn't stand the thought of her walking around like she hadn't just destroyed everything we built. I knew I had to be cautious. Her type, the kind that lies and manipulates, they're good at covering their tracks, even when you think you've got them cornered. First, I made sure to gather more proof just in case. Hidden cameras if I could set them up without her noticing. I also kept an eye on her schedule, trying to see if she was slipping up again. I knew she'd be careful, but I caught a few inconsistencies, little things that confirmed I was right. She'd go out with friends, but I'd see her texting Jake or some other guy just as much as I saw her with the so-called friends. It was obvious she was trying to keep her secret safe, but I was catching on. At the same time, I was trying to keep my emotions in check. I didn't want to blow up everything prematurely. I knew that if I confronted her again, it had to be with undeniable proof. I also didn't want her to spin her usual lies and make me look crazy. So I played it smart, bided my time, and waited for the moment when I could hit her with everything at once. One evening I came home early from work. I wanted to catch her in the act, see if she'd slip up, or better yet, confront her when she thought I was clueless. That's when I found her in the kitchen on her phone, texting someone. I didn't even have to peek. Her face lit up in a way that told me all I needed to know. She was definitely in the middle of something she didn't want me to see. I didn't say a word. I just stood there watching her, feeling a strange mixture of rage and betrayal. When she finally noticed me, she froze. I could see the panic in her eyes. That was the moment I knew I had her cornered. I grabbed her phone, looked at the screen, more messages from Jake, more lies, more betrayal. She tried to snatch it away, but I was faster. Her face went pale, her lips trembling as she realized I'd caught her red-handed. Her reaction was classic. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, crazy, insecure. She told me I was overreacting again, that I was just jealous because she still looked good and wanted someone to validate her. She told me I was imagining things, that she'd never cheat on me. She was just tired, stressed, and maybe a little bored. But her words sounded hollow even as she spat them out. I could see her trying to justify her actions, trying to make me feel bad for catching her. I felt my blood boiling. I wanted to rip her apart, to scream at her how much she'd hurt me. But I kept my cool because I knew if I lost control, I'd ruin everything. Instead, I told her I knew about her affair, that I had the proof, and that I was done pretending. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked genuinely scared, like she finally realized she'd pushed me too far. She tried to lie her way out of it, of course. Said Jake was just a crush, just a distraction, that she never intended to leave me. that I was being unreasonable, that she still loved me but just needed something more. I couldn't believe her words. It was like watching a criminal deny the crime even with the evidence in their face. I told her that I was done with her excuses, that I was leaving, whether she liked it or not. That night I packed my bags. I didn't say much, just told her I'd be staying at a friend's place for a while. The look she gave me, full of contempt like I was the one at fault, made me realize I'd been living with a monster. She called me pathetic, told me I was overreacting, tried to guilt-trip me, but I didn't care. I was finally free of her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I'd been stabbed, left bleeding on the floor. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to pretend it never happened, but I knew deep down that trust was gone for good. I couldn't erase the images, the texts, her betrayal. I was hurt, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I could breathe again, even if it was just a little. I realized I'd been a pawn in her twisted game, and now I was finally taking back control. The days after I moved out were some of the hardest I've ever gone through. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneaky meetings, the way she dismissed my feelings like they didn't matter. It was a sharp punch in the gut every time I thought about how she threw away everything we had built. At first, I wanted to believe I could somehow fix her, or that she'd come to her senses and realize what she was losing. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. She was who she was, a lying, manipulative bitch who'd rather screw around than face her own flaws. During that first week, I avoided her as much as possible. I did answer her calls or texts. When I did see her, she'd try to act like everything was normal, smiling, pretending she was the victim, telling me she was sorry I got carried away, or that I was overreacting. Yeah, right. Sorry doesn't cut it after I found out she'd been cheating on me with my best friend, all behind my back. That's not just a mistake, that's betrayal of the highest order. I also started thinking about the revenge I wanted. Not just some petty revenge, but something that would hit her where it hurt, something that would make her regret ever messing with me. I'd been planning this for days, and I knew I had to be meticulous. She's the type that would spin the story, deny everything, or even try to turn others against me. So I kept evidence, screenshots of texts, recordings of her dismissive attitude, everything. It was all about making sure I could prove she was the liar and the cheat when the time came. One thing that really pushed me was how she kept trying to play the victim. She'd call me crazy, say I was stalking her, or that I was just jealous because I lacked confidence. It made me furious. If she's so innocent, why lie? Why sneak around? Why hide her phone every chance she got? The more she denied, the more I realized she was just spinning her web of lies to protect herself. I started to see her for who she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who cared about herself more than anything else. Meanwhile, my relationship with my brother's wife, Sarah, was becoming a source of support. She's someone I trust, and she'd been quietly listening to everything I said. When I told her what I found, she was furious too. Called Lisa a bitch and told me I needed to cut her out completely. Sarah's advice helped me stay grounded, reminded me that I deserved better than a wife who'd cheat and lie without remorse. I started to realize this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sanity. I also started thinking about what I'd do if Lisa tried to spin her version of the story. I already had enough evidence to prove her wrong, but I knew she'd try to manipulate others, paint me as the crazy ex, the jealous husband who couldn't handle her independence. So I made some plans, talked to a lawyer, started documenting everything, and even considered going to a counselor just to keep my head straight. I wasn't going to let her win by making me look like the bad guy. I wanted the truth out there, plain and simple. Honestly, I felt a mix of anger and exhaustion. I was pissed at her for everything, her lies, her betrayal, the way she threw away our marriage, and at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I also knew I was done being the pawn. I had to start thinking about myself now, about healing and moving on. That's when I realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I finally took control of my life, no matter how much it hurt. I promised myself I'd come out of this stronger, even if I had to crawl through the mud to get there. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotion and decision-making. I stayed at Sarah's place for a while, trying to keep some distance from Lisa and everything that had happened. Every morning I woke up feeling a mix of grief, anger, and a strange sense of relief. Relief that I finally knew the truth and could start healing. But at the same time, there was this gnawing feeling that I'd been played, used, and discarded like a piece of trash. One day, I finally decided I'd had enough of her lies. I called her up, told her I wanted to meet face to face. My voice was steady, but inside I was boiling. I knew I needed to hear her explain herself if she even could. When she arrived, she looked different, more irritated, like she was expecting to manipulate her way out of it again. But I was done playing her game. I laid the evidence out on the table, screenshots, recordings, everything. I told her I knew what she'd done, I knew about Jake, about her secret meetings, and I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. Her reaction, classic. She threw a fit, started shouting, calling me controlling and paranoid. She called me bitter and said I was just jealous because I couldn't satisfy her anymore. She even accused me of cheating myself, saying I was probably cheating on her with some coworker or neighbor. I didn't bother to argue. I just looked at her and said I was done, that I'd been more than patient, more than fair, and that I was leaving for good. I told her I didn't want to see her face again, that she'd burned every bridge between us. That was probably the moment I felt the most alive, when I finally took control and refused to be the victim anymore. I'd planned to leave and start over, but I also knew I had to do something more, something that would make her regret her choices. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some pushover, that I was capable of making her pay for what she did. So I decided to take her to court, not to get back at her just yet, but to ensure she didn't try to manipulate the situation or turn others against me. It wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about making her face the consequences. I worked with a lawyer, gathered every bit of evidence I had, and prepared for a fight. I knew she'd try to lie, spin stories, maybe even threaten me, but I was ready. I'd made up my mind I was done being the fool. I wanted a clean break, and I wanted her to know that she'd lost everything because of her own choices. Throughout all this, I also started focusing more on myself. I went to therapy, something I should have done years ago. If anything, it helped me process the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the anger. I realized I'd allowed her to control so much of my life for too long. I let her lie to my face, cheat behind my back, and still tried to pretend everything was okay. Now I saw things clearly. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who never cared about me the way I cared about her. I know it's going to take time to rebuild, and I don't expect everything to be perfect overnight. But I do know one thing. I'm finally taking my life back. I won't be a pawn in her twisted game anymore. I've learned that trusting blindly is dangerous, and that sometimes you have to face the ugly truth head-on, even if it shatters your entire world. I'm stronger for it, even if it hurts like hell right now. I just hope that sharing this might help someone else see that it's okay to walk away from betrayal, and that ultimately you're better off without the lies and deceit. The court date finally arrived, and it was as miserable as I'd imagined. Lisa showed up with that typical bitchy smirk, trying to act like everything was just fine, like she hadn't thrown away 5 years of marriage for some fleeting affair. But I knew better. I had all the evidence, every screenshot, every message, every lie she'd told. As the judge listened, I felt a strange sense of relief knowing I was finally laying it all out there. Not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been betrayed like this. Trust shattered, love turned into betrayal. Lisa's face was a mask of anger and contempt the entire time. She lied through her teeth, claiming she never cheated, that I was just paranoid, that I was the one who was unfaithful. It was laughable. I kept my calm, but inside I was seething. I didn't need her to admit anything anymore. The evidence spoke for itself. When the judge finally made the ruling, it was clear-cut. I was awarded the divorce, and I got full custody of my dog, thank God, because I could stand the thought of her trying to manipulate anyone else in my life. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a weight lift. I had finally closed that chapter, and although the wound is still fresh, I knew I was better off without her. I realized that all the pain, the anger, the sleepless nights, it was worth it. I'd face the truth head on and I'd come out the other side stronger. That's what I want anyone reading this to know. Betrayal cuts deep, but you're capable of healing. Sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off and face the ugly truth to move on. Now, I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. I'm focusing on my career, reconnecting with friends, and most importantly, learning to trust myself again. Lisa's betrayal taught me a harsh lesson about honesty and the importance of paying attention to the warning signs. I've become more cautious, more aware, and more determined not to let anyone manipulate me like that again. I also learned that revenge isn't about getting back at someone. It's about reclaiming your power and dignity. Reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've grown. I was naive, sure, but I also allowed her to control parts of my life for too long. Now I see clearly. I see how much betrayal can destroy, but I also see how it can teach you to value yourself more. I hope anyone out there who's going through something similar understands. Don't stay in a toxic situation just because you're afraid of being alone. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to walk away. Because in the end, you deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly cares. And if they don't give it to you, you're better off without them.